Hey, welcome. My name is Daniel, and this is Metal Sharpens Metal, the place where I analyze heavy music from a Christian worldview. Guys, I did not plan to make this video today. I have a whole internal release planning thing that has all the videos that I want to put out, and these guys were not on my radar for the near future. I will say, though, that it's apropos, considering the time of year, that we are going back to the world-famous Smoochiecore Halloween band. And yes, my PG version of their genre is going to be called Smoochiecore. But yeah, they were not on my radar until I got a comment saying that I should do some more research and I should look into the meaning of these songs more. I thought to myself, well, I know that the band doesn't do any interviews. How could I possibly learn more? Well, there's a whole wedge, like in the pie chart of the internet. There's a whole wedge carved out to Sleep Token decoding, understanding, lore, runes. There's hidden messages. It's insane. There's a lot. You can dive into this for hours. So I have learned some things since my last video I did for their song Alkaline. And my main two goals today will be to increase my accuracy when exegeting the band and explaining what they're about, and also hopefully learning from somebody's mistakes. That would be Vessel. He has made some mistakes. He's put it on paper for us to read, and I think we can learn from it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the song. Let's go jump in. Okay, the tone and like the frequency that's about to come in, I can't describe like what it does to me. And it's like it makes me feel like I have to sneeze, but I can't. It's like itchy almost. And then the vocals, of course. It was no accident. Sounds like his mouth is full of like honey. Yeah, that part's bonkers. So you keep me sharp and test my worth in blood. And here we get to see our patron demon coming in. You got me in a chokehold. You got me in a chokehold. Super creepy. I mean, you can't deny the chops. This is one of the best, most fun polyrhythms to play on drums, I think. Kind of a different vibe here. Very minimalist and focus on the groove and the vocals. I've been focused on the vocals most of the time. All right, building to the gigantic ending like we always do. Lots of skulls there. Body count, keep in mind. This post-chorus. The song is almost like, for me, it's kind of centered on that post-chorus. Like that's the part that gets stuck in my head. Man. So it's not as crazy as the songs that I sometimes feature on this channel. It's not like super technical, crazy all over the place, but just a very well-written song building to that big choral ending and the post-chorus that has the guitars like get even lower. It's crazy. That song works really well, and they build like an effective atmosphere that kind of brings you into each one, makes it unique. I mean, this is Sleep Token. Like a lot of people, anyone who's familiar with them is going to be familiar with how they do that. They build a story. I mean, each one is kind of a story, and that leads me into my main point for the video, which is that I was pointed to an interesting video from a user named Brett B. And the video had a guy doing a pretty good job breaking things down in the first 3 Sleep Token albums. He was making a kind of a documentation of his interpretation of the lyrics. And he was going through the ethos of the band, the overarching meaning. And I think he did a pretty good job. He did say it was just his opinion. And since the band doesn't do interviews or revealing articles or anything like that, this video, my video, is going to be a little bit of a speculative mission as well. So we'll see what you guys think. Hopefully you can make it to the end. And even if you disagree, hopefully you can see, okay, I understand what you're saying. I don't agree with your assessment, but I understand what you mean. Yeah, I will acknowledge there is more to this band, more to their songs than I originally thought. I didn't do like as much research as some of these guys for my first video, but in my defense, so what? We don't have to know necessarily every single corner of the sleep ideology or the band members' backgrounds or anything like that in order to know if it becomes a red flag or not. So I do stand by my first video. I stand by the opinions that I had there, but I think it's important that I make updates for the sake of accuracy and fairness. And I've learned some things since then, so I want to kind of bring that to your attention and present it in a slightly different way this time. So some of those lore videos, I watched 2 or 3 of them. They were ranging from an hour plus to 6 minutes, but yeah, they had a lot. So let me simplify things down a little bit for you. Vessel dated a particular baddie. Sounds like she got more toxic than average.
Because she's a heartbreaking tart.
And he's processing now, at minimum, by writing these songs, and at worst, by doing self-harm and worshiping a demon. So that's like the kind of range that we have to work in. And one guy in the videos even thought that the god Sleep was kind of a metaphorical representation of the girl or girls in Vessel's past that caused him this pain. He did his best to be faithful to them, but they were like fickle Roman deities that burned down his crops instead of sending rain. So he kind of personified it and abstracted it into this other religion.
Awesome. Awful, I mean.
So it's like he's putting this poetic mythology on top of the relationship angle to make a nice, complete layer of cake, just ready for the slicing. Yeah, okay. Anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk on that, but let's jump into the lyrics for Chokehold. So when we were made, it was no accident. We were tangled up like branches in a flood. And, when we were made, not an accident, like they were meant for each other in a certain sense. And being tangled up in the branches, like branches in the flood, sounds like they flowed down the river of time. And, if you've ever watched floodwaters or anything, like the branches that get stuck together, they're not going to come apart. Like they were destined to meet at that point in the river, and now they're stuck. And the name of the song in the chorus, Chokehold, I mean, the neck is a very sensitive, vulnerable, big highway of life for, blood to your brain. And as I was thinking about this, there's a huge parallel that can be drawn between the relationship described in this song and the song Trust by Thrice. Because in that song, there's a level of trust and devotion that Dustin is giving to the other side, despite that side having the capability of snapping Dustin's neck. But the difference in that song is that other person is actually trustworthy. And if you know anything about the story of Sleep Token, and like I said, this toxic relationship, then that is not what's happening here. But man, that makes me really want to go through the Trust song by Thrice. And then it's interesting in the last line that he says, "You've got me in a," and he doesn't say the word chokehold. It's almost like he doesn't have enough air to finish the sentence.
Takes the esophagus out of the neck area. You can't eat. You'll starve to death.
The second verse has Vessel talking about going over mountain and through stormy sea to be with this person. He even turns his walls to gold in order to entice her to stay with him, which is a super important metaphor that kind of parallels, but in like the opposite way, a concept in the book of Proverbs that we'll talk about more later. He's doing all of this in spite of the pain that might come. He's not thinking clearly. And again, that's probably due to the lack of blood because you got the... And then there was a line that kind of struck me recently. He says, "Although we act out of our holy duty to be constantly awake." And this one was confusing at first, but I do have some thoughts now. In their theology, in the band's, made up religion, the god Sleep promotes sleep and dreams as a way of communing with his people. And he even spoke to Vessel in a dream. And that's like, I think that's seen as the ultimate end goal, is sleep and kind of rest from this world, which, by the way, sounds a lot like how demonic encounters go when they're reported. Do with that what you will. But yeah, without going too far down the speculative path, if you haven't yet, you might want to dive into a podcast called Haunted Cosmos. It's an interesting show that has some solid Christian explanatory power about our world, and especially in the supernatural and demonic and stuff like that. But anyway, Sleep wants Vessel to go night-night so that he can communicate with him there. Then this line seems to be indicating that Vessel is submitting to that and pushing back against the idea of being awake and aware. This just in, Vessel is not woke, so don't have to worry about him at the next school board meeting. But yeah, in general, people agree that it's good to be awake and aware. It's good to have knowledge of things, right? But Vessel is saying that it's our holy duty, I think kind of sarcastically, and saying that our real call is to submit to sleep, like falling asleep and or the god sleep. At least for this song, that seems to be where his head is at when he's writing this. Because he kind of has this love-hate relationship with Sleep and the girlfriend, whoever he's talking to. He's like sometimes pushing back against them and resisting. Other times he's submitting and he's just overtaken, and he doesn't like what he turns out to be. But it's like this cycle that kind of goes back and forth. I wonder if some people got upset with my first video because they didn't hear me acknowledging that I really appreciate the band's musical abilities.
I've already admitted that I do. Why do you keep making me repeat it?
So look, this band is very skilled. This song is very epic. Like, that's undeniable. The problem is that the whole picture of the band doesn't stop there. There's a clear message that you also have to deal with. These guys want to bring you into a well-packaged product. They want you to participate with them. I mean, I think that's a huge reason why people will comment worship on their stuff. I also think that's a huge reason why they blew up in popularity, because people really want to belong to something. People want to be a part of religions, gangs, like friendships, like everything in between. And even though this isn't acknowledged as a real religion, I think that might even be more appealing to these people, because it's not like you have to go tell mom and dad, "Hey guys, like I joined a cult today. Like, I'm a Scientologist now." You don't have to make any weird confessions. You can just say, "I really appreciate this band that's super skilled." To gain your loyalty, they don't need you to believe that sleep actually exists. You just get to benefit from being in a community of like-minded people who understands you and enjoys these epic songs. So the band wants to bring people in. They want to express a worldview. They specifically don't share their identities. I think a lot of people see that as you got two sides to it, right? It increases the mystery, and then people want to know more, and they keep listening and clicking. And then there's the other side, which is, because you don't know who we are, the hope is that you would focus on the music and the message. So the worldview war is right there, and that plays a big part in whether I will recommend this band to myself or to other people. So in the last video, I kind of touched on that cultic religion side of the band a little bit more, and I stand by the things I said, that stuff is a problem. But again, like I said, there are a lot of people who don't believe that it's a real religion. So they kind of take this more naturalist view that says that the gods sleep might just be a metaphor for the women that Vessel has been with. So I wanted to address that side of it on this video. I think there's a really interesting parallel between Vessel's girlfriends, like this, or singular, we'll just talk about a singular girlfriend from now on. I think there's a really interesting parallel between her and a concept of foolishness that's laid out in the Bible. In the book of Proverbs, we see a father trying to instruct his son. He's teaching his son, and he talks about two different types of women and two different paths that he can take. The Lady Wisdom wants what's best for the boy, including him not being a lazy slob and expecting her to wait on him hand and foot. And her wisdom points that young man to God and allows him to flourish in God's world. The other lady is Folly, and she's also called the adulteress in Proverbs.
And now she thinks she's better than everybody.
She's loud, she's self-centered, she leaves a trail of dead men in her wake. A very interesting alternative to the term body count, if you know what I mean. I don't know if there was a parallel in the music video with all the skulls on that bug's back. But yeah, she's really nice on the outside, just not so much on the inside. That's like where the rotting tomb stuff is.
She'd probably be a 6 in New York, but she's like a 7 here in Scranton.
It even says in Proverbs 7 that being caught by her is like being a deer who's caught in a hunter's trap and then gets an arrow through its liver. Turns out that's fatal. But what's ironic about this song is when Vessel talks about making his walls gold to bring his abusive lover home, that's normally seen in the book of Proverbs as the seductress's job. In Proverbs 7 again, she says, I have spread my couch with coverings, colored linens from Egyptian linen. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Then she says, let us take our fill of love till the morning. So she's the one preparing her home to entice these young men to turn aside and be sinful. But here Vessel is doing all that work for her. He's patiently setting himself up to be slaughtered. And yes, I realize that in the song Aqua Regia on this album, it might be referring to that gold on his walls melting away. But for the sake of analyzing this song, his headspace was that, this was what he wanted to do. So we can't diminish that, whether he was in his right mind or not. So some of you probably won't like this next part, but here I go tossing the grenade anyway. I think a lot of the problems that Vessel is going through in his life are the result of him rejecting God's designs and going his own way. I know that there's a lot of complexity in getting out of abusive situations sometimes. I get that. But for now, let's talk about how he got in that situation so that it can serve as a reminder to us and to our children. Whether it's because Vessel doesn't know about the real Yahweh of the Bible or because he does know and chooses to reject him, Vessel is now reaping the rewards of doing this. He's going through the struggles in his life partly because he's not living according to the way that God set up the world to work. For example, to most people, I know the idea of waiting until marriage to have sex is so very quaint and prude and loveless.
It's not 1890 anymore. It's modern day.
But there is a reason for it. What if waiting could prevent a relationship like this? It could potentially filter out those harpies who are bristling with more red flags than a construction site. I think it'd be worth it for that reason alone. But that's just like the first step. God also tells people to listen to the Lady Wisdom, reject the Lady Folly, work hard in our marriage every day, and us men to be devoted to one woman, to lay down our lives for her as Christ loves his church. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be simple to do all of that stuff when you failed the very first challenge. When you pursue a loose woman who fell into your bed at the drop of a hat, you might have a really good time for days, weeks, years, but it shouldn't be a surprise if one day you find that she's cheated on you, or if she is emotionally and psychologically manipulative and abusive because you're wrapped up in her designs, or she straight up leaves you because your weak morals subconsciously erode her opinion of you. Now, I'm not berating anyone who has failed this way. Christ has died and forgiven multiple failures like this, but it's going to add a lot more complexity and difficulty to your relationship, and we would do well to heed the warnings that are right in front of us here. Because looking at their albums as a whole, it's clear that Vessel is hurt and depressed from whatever he went through. And while this isn't a reason in and of itself to just dismiss all the problems that I have with the band that I've laid out and fully support them instead, he's still an image bearer of God. I really do hope that one day he receives a radically changed heart that looks to Jesus for his identity rather than relying on his own efforts or his own processing or these toxic lady folk, There's a reason many of us are broken today, and the path forward is not to create our own God that we think is worthy of worship. That God is just a distraction for the moment and cannot ultimately sustain us. So I pray that Vessel can find true peace with the true God of heaven instead. Thank you for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, that's why. So let me simplify that. So let me life are rather than though it's guys. I don't know. Maybe.